Jackson on the drive, kicks it out for man. Man, three-pointer, bang! Oh, what a man!
Magic down the middle, just what I thought. A hook shot at 12, good!
Here's Michael at the foul line, a shot on Elo, good!
The Bulls win! They win it!
Now there's a steal by Murr, underneath the DJ, going up over Bell, ball away, yes! Yes! At the buzzer, he does it! Was there ever a doubt? A Smith screen, Ojibo the bench.
Oh! LeBron James with no regard for human life!
It's a physical game.
Oh, man, oh, God! A monster jam by Blake Griffin!
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another 2023 playoff preview here on Dime Dropper. As always, getting fans for diehard fans of their team to come represent against one another. And before we get started, you already know the deal. Follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Dime Dropper Pod for all NBA, LA sports content. And subscribe on the YouTube channel, hit the notification bell so you know every single time we post a video. For this episode, very special series, the NorCal Showdown between the Sacramento Kings and the Golden State Warriors. Here representing the defending champion Warriors is Andre, also On Ball Steph on Twitter, has a great following, great knowledge of the game. And representing the Sacramento Kings is a longtime local fan of the Kings, Jrue. Both of you guys, thank you so much for joining me. How are we feeling?
Excited, nervous, excited. I know for Andre, this is a regular thing, even for you, right, Darian? Like, you guys are just constantly in the playoffs. This is the first time in 17 years that the Kings are in the playoffs. So definitely excited, but definitely also nervous. And we are about 24 hours away from game one and the first playoff game to be played in Sacramento in 17 years. Incredibly excited. Can't wait to see it. I mean, this is going to be some beautiful, beautiful offensive basketball, I'm sure.
Andre, how are we feeling, man? This is a different situation for the Warriors, starting out a series on the road for the first time since 2014 against us.
I would say 2019 in the finals against Toronto,
Right.
but in the Western Conference, yeah, you're right. In 2014, it's funny because we've had 27 straight series of winning at least one game on the road. That's a number that gets thrown around a lot, and people look at our road record this year and they want to believe that and obviously for good reason, right? Any team that's 11 and whatever, what was it, 11 and 30 on the road, it's not necessarily a good sign. But there's a sample size of nearly a decade that suggests that when it's in this type of environment, in this type of setting, like, you can expect them to at least split. And obviously in 2013, kind of the inception, not necessarily of the dynasty, but of this core, they split against the Spurs on the road, or even Denver in the first round, because they were the 6th seed, Denver was the 3 seed. Then you go to that Spurs series, same type of story. That obviously, like you said, game one against the Clippers in 14, and so on and so forth. So, hey, I feel good about it. The Kings, that part of the bracket was probably more favorable than playing Denver in the second round and then whoever in the conference final. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens game one, because I think that's probably the biggest game of the series.
Let's start out with Jrue. First, just give us a little background, man, on your fandom, when you started watching the Kings, all that, since it's your first time on the channel.
Yeah, been a Kings fan since I think my first full season of watching was the lockout shortened 98-99 season. And I was real young. So I thought it was going to be like this. I thought it was going to be that way forever. I thought the Kings were always going to be good. I thought the Kings had always been good. 2006 comes around. They stopped being good. I feel like I was duped, so many painful losses to the Lakers. I mean, 3 straight years they faced off against one another in the playoffs. And then, of course, they had that classic series in 2002. And really that knee injury to Weber in 2003, that was kind of the beginning of the end of that core. And I did not know that prior to 1998 that the Kings were just bad. And outside of just that 8-year window, they had just always been bad. And so we just got back to being what we always were, just bad. And so it's been 17 years of just mediocrity and just poor management and poor basketball decisions. And I've been here throughout all that. I've been here through the relocation stuff as well. I mean, there were 2 different relocation things that were supposed to happen that never did because the city fought to keep their team. And it's been such a rewarding experience this season, having said all that I just said, having experienced all that, to finally be able to just enjoy good basketball. So yeah, I've been a fan for a long time. It's really, really cool finally seeing them be good again. And it's just, I look at kids roughly the same age that I was when the Kings first became a good team back in the late 90s, early to mid 2000s. And this is a whole new generation of Kings fans that, hopefully are about to experience a lot of winning, which is really, really exciting for the city.
That's awesome, man. I mean, I've obviously, as a Clipper fan, I sympathize. I personally haven't experienced as many, losing seasons in my time as a fan, but I can relate to the whole poverty franchise thing and just people saying that, but they're the Kings, but they're the Clippers. They're not going to do this. So let's just go into this season now. You come in with the expectation of maybe obviously being better than last season. You brought in Sabonis last year, midway through the season, traded Halliburton. The media killed you guys for that. Almost like they underestimated how good of a player Sabonis was and how good of a tandem he could have been with De'Aaron Fox. You draft Keegan Murray, who's been a great success. Talk to us about this year's Sacramento Kings team. Mike Brown coming in. What has made this Kings team so great? The best offensive rating of all time. Let us know how this season has gone from your perspective.
Yeah, I think anybody who told you before the season that they predicted 48 wins and a 119.6 offensive rating, and to have Mike Brown as a Coach of the Year finalist, De'Aaron Fox as a Clutch Player of the Year finalist, 2 All-Stars, Fox and Sabonis. If you predicted all that, then I would have called you absolutely insane. I don't think anybody could have expected that. But I think what really, really got this team started off on the right foot was the hiring of Mike Brown. I think Mike Brown just was right down the road. Obviously, Andre, I'm sure, is very, very familiar with the work that he did there for 6 years and all the titles that he won there. And he knows what it takes to turn around really a poor culture and what it took to get this organization moving in the right direction. And he knew that everybody had to be on board with it. And I think he came in, and from day one, he said, I'm going to hold not only myself, but everybody to that standard. And it's really got this ship moving in the right direction. Like, these guys have all bought in. Everybody in the organization has bought in. And I think that was the one crucial element of the offseason that the Kings had absolutely hit a home run with. And Monte McNair made the absolute right hire. I think when you looked at that initial list of candidates, Mike Brown certainly separated himself from the pack, just given his success at previous stops. I think he was unfairly really anointed as a retread. I don't think that he got a fair shot that second time in Cleveland. I don't think he got a fair shot with the Lakers, even, after one pretty successful season. So Mike Brown was really just, he was the obvious candidate. So he was the right hire. The Kings got that right, and I think that really got things moving in the right direction. But yeah, as far as personnel goes, I was certainly skeptical about De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis together. I didn't necessarily hate the trade. I thought that it could have been a win-win trade. That's what it certainly looks like right now for both the Pacers and the Kings, because
definitely,
obviously, Tyrese has been awesome. But Sabonis certainly was. I mean, people were talking about this guy as if he was a 35-year-old journeyman center on a fat contract that was just going to be a whole bunch of dead money and that he was in the twilight of his career. No. Domantas Sabonis, I think anybody who pays attention to the league knows that he's a very, 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 very skilled, talented, capable big. And putting him next to Fox is obviously, that's been the big thing personnel wise, is putting those two guys together. He's been sensational this year. Should be an All-NBA selection. He's obviously elevated Fox, and then the additions, like you said, of Keegan Murray, drafting him. The Kings got killed for that too, by the way. Nobody thought they should have taken Keegan Murray over Jaden Ivey, but here we are. He now holds the record for most 3-pointers made by a rookie. And Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk, I mean, those two acquisitions were also huge as well. The spacing, the shooting gravity that those two provide for Fox and Sabonis to work, and to really make teams pay for sagging off of them and crashing in on a guy like De'Aaron Fox, who's almost a guaranteed paint touch. I mean, that's been huge this season. I think it's a huge reason why the team has had such a great season offensively.
Yeah, De'Aaron Fox having a career year, of course, 25 points, 4 rebounds, and 6 assists on 51% shooting. Domantas Sabonis, the same, 19 points, 12 rebounds, and 7 assists on 61.5% shooting. I mean, the guys have just been amazing.
Yeah.
Dude, I can feel the authenticity of fandom coming from you. This is awesome. I love this. let's go to Andre now. You guys have had a roller coaster of a season, beginning with Draymond Green's punch in the offseason to Jordan Poole. Give me the rundown of the vibes, the bad road record, how the big three have looked this year, the whole young versus, the youth timeline of it, not, separate timeline thing. Dre, you do a really good job of summarizing these kind of things. So just give me a summary of the Warriors season for those that don't watch them every game. Why have the defending champs dropped off so much, especially defensively?
Yeah, it's been about 3 or 4 seasons in one. I mean, you look at kind of like The Last Dance, right? And you see a lot of stuff behind the scenes that people never even realized took place in a dynasty. So like you said, starting with the punch, obviously that happened, during before the season started. So that's not a great way to start it off. Um, we have the Japan games, so that kind of takes your legs out. Then you start the season already playing the most games of last year. We had the most back-to-backs this year, or I think we were tied for second, something like that.
I'm pretty sure we had the most, as
Yeah,
usual.
the Clippers might have had the most. The Warriors were like second or third or something. They were one of the most
Okay.
for back-to-backs, and then so that like the punch kind of set the tone for the season, because you could see Draymond's willingness to be a vocal leader like he has in the past was severely diminished. He had to earn back the trust of his teammates. He kind of, settled in, didn't really necessarily evoke that level of leadership he traditionally does. And slowly but surely, I mean, throughout the year, you had multiple Steph injuries that took him out for a few weeks. The labrum tear, the lower leg injury. Then you had Wiggins with the adductor strain. Next thing he has obviously the personal situation with his father that he had to take care of, and it was just a tumultuous season from multiple standpoints. I think Jordan was also very up and down. Many people would argue he had a down year since last year. We started off 0-8 on the road, which is obviously not ideal. But the reason for that, you look at those games, we just couldn't close the deal. Look at Charlotte. You look at a team like Orlando or Detroit. A lot of these bottom feeding teams that we just couldn't close out on the road to start off the season. Steve Kerr playing 5-man hockey lineups, substitution lineups, and patterns. Like you said, the two timelines situation with Wiseman. You got Kuminga, Moody, Patrick Baldwin Jr. A bunch of these young players. Ryan Rollins taking up a roster spot, not a two-way spot, a roster spot. So Joe Lacob sort of thought of this season as an opportunity to put his foot down and almost double down on the two timelines concept. And unfortunately, it took away from the roster spots that we needed to sign vets when guys went down, to give us some margin for error, to give us some breathing room. Guys who know how to play the game in terms of this system, from a defensive standpoint, from a discipline standpoint. So you look at all these moving parts and factors, and you can understand why the season's been up and down. But ultimately, I think at the trade deadline, it was a huge deal that we were able to get GP2 back, trading Wiseman for those 5 second rounders, and then flipping that into GP2. And I think that was a message to the core that we still believe that you guys can get it done. We've seen what you can do this year, and we're going to give you guys the best chance possible. We're going to expand and increase that margin for error as much as we could with a guy who's proven last year to be a championship caliber piece. So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, from the punch, from the injuries to the youth movement, I can understand why things have not been what they were last year. But on the flip side, defensively, we were as low as the low 20s this year, 22nd, 24th, 18th. But we kind of settled in at the end of the season at 14th. So obviously not ideal. You want to be kind of a top third defensive team, but we're top half, and so that's a good thing. Obviously, with guys missing time, that's kind of a bright sign. And then obviously, we're a better offense than we were last year. We're top 10 this year. Last year we finished 17th. So all things considered, we ended the season pretty strong, 8-2. On the road, we won 2 or 3 games in a row on the road to end the year. And again, it's not necessarily the winning of those games as much as the process of those games. Like against Denver, right? people like to point out, you lose that game without Jokic, but we shot the ball really poorly. We played probably a C- level game, like very poorly, and we were within a possession, and we were down by as much as 12 points in that fourth quarter. So you see the signs, and obviously they still have to put it together. It's not a done deal, but I like the trajectory, and I like how towards the end of the season we've been able to put things together. But most importantly, we're healthy leading up to the playoffs with Wiggins coming back for game one expectedly.
It was good stuff. Yeah, definitely been a roller coaster season for Golden State. Seems like they started to play better towards the end. Jrue, let's go to you. Tell me where you think, first of all, what's your confidence level going into this series? Because you are the higher seed, but I've never seen a higher seed this, like, I don't want to say disrespected, but I haven't talked to one person that thinks the Kings are going to win this series yet. And I think they're being a little harsh. I feel like you're not getting a fair shake here. Let me know your confidence level. And also, now we get on the court, what do you think you guys can do to exploit this Warriors team?
I don't blame anybody for not having confidence in this Kings team. I don't. And I think there were a lot of things that Draymond said on his podcast that Kings fans and people in the media around here felt away about it. I don't think he said anything wrong. I really don't. He hit the nail on the head. There's a ton of experience with the Warriors. There's really none with the Kings. You're looking at their main rotation guys. The only guy who has a ring by way of the Warriors and is in the rotation is Harrison Barnes. The rest of the playoff minutes on this team come from essentially Matthew Dellavedova, who, even if he were healthy, he would not be playing very much, but he's injured as well. So look, I don't take any offense to it. I'm not overly sensitive about it. I get it, man. This core of the Warriors has 4 championships together. There's no reason why people should give the Kings the benefit of the doubt. But I would say my confidence level is probably around an 8 out of 10. If we did it on a scale out of 10, I'd say 8. And a big reason why is because of really it's the offense. I mean, this offense really. I was watching back the first couple of matchups early on in the season, Andre. When they played at Chase Center, and that team that I was watching out there, the Kings, that is not the same team that they are now. I think really by late December, January, that offense really got going. It really these guys finally, took that next step, started trusting each other a lot more, and we're just running that thing like a well-oiled machine finally. And it took some time, but they finally got there. And that's when the spike in offensive rating started. I mean, that's when it really started humming. And even in February, when Kevin Huerter's shooting absolutely cratered, the offense still looked good. And what that tells me, and a lot of the accounts that I follow, X's and O's accounts, guys around the national media, what they always seem to say about this Kings offense is that the process never changes. Like, it could be the first quarter, it could be a blowout, it could be a close game in the clutch late in the fourth quarter. Aside from maybe giving De'Aaron Fox the ball every now and then to kind of just do his thing, because he should be winning that Clutch Player of the Year award. If he doesn't, then that's a war crime. But they always run their stuff. You can't get them away from what they're doing. So they run their wide set, that wing to wing screen. They run that elbow flash where they hit Sabonis, and they run a lot of zoom stuff out of it. They run a lot of post splits. Obviously, Warriors fans who are watching the series will probably see a mirror image in that sense, because they run a ton of splits from both the high post and on the block. They do this stuff all the time. It doesn't matter what the situation is. They will always run their stuff. And that's a big reason why, obviously, they've ended up with a really, really high offensive rating and the best offensive rating in the league. So I think my confidence is there mostly because of the offense. I do think that obviously getting Wiggins back is huge. Now, how he'll look out there, we'll see, because he's been away for a couple months, right? But they still have GP2. They still, Dante DiVincenzo, also pretty good defender. And Draymond is still, he's still so elite defensively. For some reason, people thought that he lost a step. I see some of the stuff he does out there on a night-to-night basis. I'm just like, oh my goodness, like this guy can still bring it every single night. And this has been talked about a lot in Sacramento, at least on Twitter. People are not giving Kayvon Looney the credit that he deserves. I don't think that Sabonis is just going to walk all over the guy. Kayvon Looney is a very capable defender. He should be really solid guarding Sabonis one-on-one. I think Sabonis will still get his. It's just not going to be easy. And in space, Kayvon's really, really good. If he gets switched onto a guard or a wing, he can hold his own on the perimeter. So that kind of stuff they'll have to solve. There might be some pre-switching. Maybe, they might counter with certain lineups, that type of thing, in order to get the matchups that they want. But as far as exploiting the Warriors defense, I'm mostly looking at Steph, Poole, when he's on the court, and maybe Clay, who defensively isn't anywhere near the level like he used to be, right? But I mean, the Warriors still have enough. I look at the Warriors roster and I think, oh, how many plus defenders do they have? They've got a lot more than the Kings. So there will be lineups that Steve Kerr can use in order to neutralize certain lineups that the Kings throw out there. Defensively, obviously, for the Kings, the big question is who's gonna stop Steph? Like, what's the game plan there? Nobody really can. So how do you take him away, or not, or try to take him away, or at least mitigate some of what he does? There's going to be a lot of things that the Kings are going to have to figure out on both offense and especially on defense. But I think the confidence level with me offensively is there to where I do think that, a lot of points will be put up on the board. And I do think that these are all going to be shootouts. We're not going to be looking at games where these teams barely crack 100. And, it just whoever gets to 130 wins. And the Kings have won enough of those games this season for me to get, to have confidence in that sense.
Dre, and I'll reverse this question back to Jrue as well. I think the big thing for the Warriors, how are you going to stop this Kings team? But also, how are you going to look to exploit them defensively? Because everybody's talking about the Kings defense not being good enough to win a series against a team like the Warriors, finishing the league or finishing in 25th in defensive rating. So, Dre, how do you think you're going to be able to exploit this Kings team defensively? And also, just let me know how Steph and Clay have looked defensively this season, because we know, as Jrue said, Draymond is still looking pretty good defensively. But let me know how Steph and Clay have looked defensively, because when I watched those games you mentioned earlier, those early East Coast games when the losing streak, I actually watched those full ones. And Steph, there were two things I was a little concerned about. One, his defense didn't look as sharp as last year's playoffs. And two, he wasn't closing games the way we are accustomed to seeing him. So let me know about the form of the big three going into this and how you feel like you can exploit the Kings defensively.
Yeah, so I'm pretty confident going in. Obviously, the Kings are a team to be respected because, seeding and being the number one offensive rating is no joke. Like, it's historically teams that are top three in seed and number one in offense. I mean, those teams tend to do very well. That translates well in the playoffs. The problem is, obviously, like you mentioned, defensively being ranked 25th. The way I would attack that personally, and I would expect the Warriors to do as well, is just attacking the paint. I was watching actually some of those previous matchups as well, and it seemed to me that the formula here is, a lot of downhill stuff, dribble drive, kind of, and Sacramento, I expect them to blitz. I expect Mike Brown to blitz Steph, which tells me that if we're in advantage situations, you're going to have to make the right reads, make the right plays, and not necessarily have to, hunt for threes. You can get to the rim. You got GP2, you got Wiggins, you got Kuminga, you got Jordan Poole, who can create off the bounce, get to the basket, get to the free throw line. So from that standpoint, I don't think we should try to outshoot the Kings. If we try to outshoot the Kings, the series is going to go longer than it should. I think if our game plan is, offensively, we got to attack Sabonis. Steph can kind of get to his spots. They're going to have to make a decision. Are we going to trap? Are we going to drop? Are we going to, you got to go over the screen, right? You can't go under. So, are you going to ice the cut? What coverage are you going to run? I'd expect them to blitz. So if you're playing an advantage regardless, I don't think the Warriors are going to have much trouble doing what they do, whether it be, create an open shot at the basket or at the 3-point line. Now, as far as Steph and Clay's defense, I don't think they've been necessarily what they were last year, but I think as the year's gone on, their legs have gotten underneath them. Steph's been okay defensively this year, I think. Earlier on, maybe I'd give him around a C+, but I think by now he's around like a solid B. He's not what he was last year, but I think in the playoffs, depending on how things are reffed, because, sometimes he'll pick up a couple ticky-tack fouls. But I expect him to be solid like he was last year. At least for most stretches of the game, right? Like, if he's 35 years old, he's going to have the responsibilities of leading the offense. but I expect him to be committed and focused on that end when the time comes. And then as far as Clay goes, Clay's been up and down. I think Ron Adams said it, the Warriors assistant coach, but even before he said it, I've been saying it on Spaces, and I've been saying it throughout the season. Like, Clay's just been up and down defensively all year. I kind of like him on the Harrison Barnes or the Keegan Murray types as opposed to De'Aaron Fox, those type of dudes, because you want him, at 6'7", 6'7", that frame. You want him on guys who, while they're moving off the ball, Clay understands those routes. He understands those movements and those angles off the screens, as opposed to having to defend quick guards who can get to their spots, who are shifty. And they're a problem, man. De'Aaron Fox is a problem. Like, we're going to have to throw multiple bodies on him. It's not going to be a Wiggins thing. It's not going to be a GP2 thing. It's going to be a team thing. Team defense wins out, right? You have to have a scheme and you have to stick to it. So it's not going to be a one-man show defensively or offensively. It's going to have to be multiple guys stepping up to the plate. You're going to need, obviously to switch on point, on target. You're going to have good communication. If you're going to play guys like Kuminga, he's going to have to be sharp and on point. He can't make too many mistakes out on the floor. And his rim pressure is valuable. So if he can be a plus defensively, then, I expect him to be a plus on both ends. A lot of question marks, not a ton, but there are some. There's a handful. But Steve Kerr is a different type of coach in the playoffs. He goes to different sets. He goes to different lineups. He goes to guys he tends to trust more often. So you're going to see a more kind of chiseled type of, game plan from the Warriors, as opposed to this season where on a night-to-night basis, Clay's kind of, one night he's guarding pretty well, the next night he's not. He can key in on whatever matchup he has, and guys can key in on their matchups, guys can key in on the game plan. And on both ends, I expect them to be pretty solid. And last point here, for the Kings, in terms of what they can offer defensively, Herter's not a horrible defender. He's just limited. Fox is okay, but they don't necessarily have an elite defender other than Davion Mitchell off the bench that I could think of. And he's a really good point of attack guy. Offensively, he's actually not as bad. I know people like to say he's not good offensively, but he can play make a bit, and he's an okay scorer, but he's obviously not necessarily like a plus. He's not necessarily going to lead your offense, 1-to-1 with Jordan Poole, bucket for bucket. But defensively, if they can get away with throwing him out there for 15 minutes, if they can do that, then that could help. Defense wins series, so you're going to need to have stretches where you can garner enough stops and be confident that could lead to buckets, because there's going to be points in the series where the Kings can't hit shots and they're going to have to get stops, and there's going to be a point in the series where the Warriors can't hit shots and they're going to have to get stops. So whoever can win that battle usually wins out the series. You kind of see that against Memphis last year, against Boston last year with the Warriors. Like, teams hit shots, man. Game 1 against Boston, they hit shots. Teams hit shots. But who can be that team that steps up and says, okay, schematically, we're going to get into your airspace. We're going to contest. We're going to box out. We're going to do all those things, and it'll lead to transition opportunities. So whoever can kind of, muster up those possessions and enough of them is probably going to win out.
Let me ask you this, Jrue. With given Mike Brown's history with the Warriors and you guys running similar kinds of offensive sets, as you mentioned, with you guys, the Nuggets and you two and the Nuggets are the three teams in the NBA to me that just play very differently than everybody else. Mm-hmm. I feel like you guys have much more off-ball movement, off-ball screens, more motion kind of offenses, where other teams are super like high pick and roll based. I love the way you guys play basketball, both your teams. How much of an advantage do you think having Mike Brown, and then also Harrison Barnes, who played 82 games this year? I didn't know about that. So good for him.
Yeah.
And just having those former Warriors, do you think that'll give you any kind of advantage?
I think Mike Brown knowing the main part of the rotation of the Warriors, I mean, like Steph, Clay, GP, Dre, being around those guys for more than a couple of years each, and then obviously for basically his entire 5-6 year tenure or whatever it was in Golden State. Yeah, that'll be good. I think he'll know what at least he think would be able to maybe slow those guys down, but obviously you can't take them completely away. So I think his familiarity with them will help in a sense. I'm I mean, it's still Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, though. Like, what can you do, really, even if you are familiar with them, to take them away? I think that's a very interesting subplot to all this. I think that him having just been there, having just helped them get to a title, I saw a lot of Warriors, because I'm a Niners fan and I'm a San Francisco Giants fan as well, and there's a lot of crossover between those two fan bases and Warriors fans. So during basketball season, I see a lot of my Niners and Giants mutuals complaining about Warriors stuff, and the main thing this year has been the defense. Although, like Andre said, it has stabilized a lot as of late. And so many of my Warriors fans tell me, "Oh man, losing Mike Brown was huge. Mike Brown is the reason why the defense isn't good anymore." I don't think that's it. I don't think that's necessarily the only reason why. But obviously, Mike Brown, at least before this season, his perception league wide as a coach was, oh, he's a defensive specialist. This guy knows defense, has always had teams in the upper half defensively every single year he's been a coach. And this year was the first year where it's just been the complete inverse. He now has the best offense in the league and has a not good defense. So it's I think it'll be interesting that he is familiar with these guys. I think it's interesting that a lot of the stuff that, some of that Warriors juice did rub off on him in a sense, and that he's got this offense playing at a very, very high level. But as far as how much it'll help the team, I'm not quite sure. I mean, maybe if he throws just complete junk out there, right? Like he throws the kitchen sink, 2-3 zone, 3-2 zone, box and ones, I don't know, triangle and twos. I don't know. Beyond that kind of stuff, I really don't know exactly what he can do to really throw this Warriors offense off balance. I mean, they're still who they are. They're still the team that has won 4 titles and is the second highest scoring team in the league. So we'll see. We'll see.
2 questions defensively. Do you, before Davion Mitchell comes in the game, who do you throw at Curry to start? And secondly, Draymond Green, Curry, high pick and roll, one of the most lethal plays in this era. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do to defend it? Andre says you guys are going to blitz and force someone else to beat you. What I thought, we did a space recently with Andre and Ricky G and a couple Warriors fans, and I was, what he said was interesting about the first quarter of the first game. It'll be interesting to see what Mike Brown's lens is, like how he's going to defend his own former team. So let me know who you throw at Curry to start the game and what will you do on the pick and roll?
Fox. It's got to be Fox. I mean, I think Andre's right in saying that Huerter is not a horrible defender. He's just, physically, he's just limited. I don't really ever see Kevin Huerter missing a rotation. I don't ever see Kevin Huerter out of position all the time. He's just, he just doesn't have the lateral movement. He doesn't, he's not agile. He can't really keep guys in front of him like that. So it can't be Kevin. And Keegan Murray, Keegan Murray got his ankles took one time by Steph. Like it was either the first or second matchup. It was pretty bad. So definitely not Keegan. And obviously Sabonis is going to stick a little bit closer to the basket, probably guard either Loon or Dre. And then you got Harrison Barnes out there, and maybe they'll cross match between Looney and Draymond. I don't know. But as far as the candidate to guard Steph to start off games, it's got to be Fox. I think he's the only guy who has that lateral movement, who has the agility and kind of the quick twitch movement in order to at least sometimes stay in front of him and sometimes keep him at bay. I do agree that the Kings will blitz, that they will send 2 bodies at Steph. The thing that worries me about that is once you pass out of that trap, and if you hit Draymond, Draymond get 4-on-3, Draymond in an advantage position like that, he's going to be making the right reads all day. It happened a couple of times in their second matchup because Steph got off to a 7-for-7 start and 4-4 from 3 that second matchup at Chase Center, and Mike Brown had seen enough. He's like, I'm putting 2 on the ball against this guy. And a couple possessions in a row, he just threw out of it, hit Draymond, and Draymond made some really simple reads for easy buckets. So I don't know. See, that's a terrifying thing is, okay, sure, this guy will guard Steph. Okay, sure, you'll do this on pick and roll against these 2. And then we haven't even talked about how they can run DHOs as well. Draymond just roving at the top of the key, wing to wing, just running DHOs with Klay and Steph. That's been the other signature thing, aside from the post splits and the pick and rolls during this dynasty, is stray quarterbacking from the high post, right? And out on the wings. I see teams struggle to guard the Kings DHOs because of their shooting gravity and because of how hard Huerter and Keegan run off those screens, and Fox getting a running start obviously gives them a really, really nice advantage going towards the basket when he's got a full head of steam. Guarding a DHO against the Warriors is a completely different thing in the sense that, well, you've got 2 of the greatest shooters of all time running off of those DHOs. So it's again, it's going to be interesting to watch. I think it will be very, like you said, it'll be very interesting. That first quarter of game one, how is Mike Brown going to feel out this process? How is he going to guard these guys? But in my head right now, I can't think of too many answers to that question as far as how do you neutralize these guys? I'm not quite sure.
And real quick, is Sabonis, defensively, people talk about him a lot. You watch him on a nightly basis. Is he, are people too harsh on him, or do you think he really has a chance to get in real trouble this series?
I think people are too harsh on him. I think even before the season, I wasn't giving him enough credit with his lateral movement, his ability to stay in front of guys in space, his ability to really, at least King's film, his ability to at least just, ride a guy's hip and at least allow the help and at least allow the help defense to come over to kind of take that away. I think he was unfairly pointed out as a guy who would just get cooked in space. So he's not that, and he's got good foot speed and he's decent in space. However, against the Warriors specifically, I can definitely imagine scenarios where, look, Steve Kerr's no fool. He knows who's behind Sabonis on that bench, which is nobody. So if you get this guy in foul trouble, be it attacking him in the paint, like Andre said, like that might be something that they look into, because the Kings don't really have any true rim protection. Sabonis isn't a rim protector. I mean, take it right into his chest in the paint. See how many fouls you can draw, right? How many cheap fouls can you draw on the perimeter where, they blitz a ball screen, or they just rent, they, even if he's at the level or if he's in a shallow drop, how many cheap fouls can you pick up by just attacking his hip and just, getting bumped? I think that'll be a huge thing that we're going to have to watch in this series as far as Sabonis and how many minutes he's able to play because of foul trouble, because Mike Brown's done a good job of keeping De'Aaron and Domas at about 30 to 34 minutes a game during the regular season. Now it's playoff time. These guys are probably going to have to be out there for 40 minutes a game, right? So
yeah,
is he going to be able to do that? We'll see, because that foul trouble factor that looms large. I think that's something that the Warriors know that they can certainly exploit. And if they get him into foul trouble, and if he's on the bench, they're not going to run their offense the way that they want it to be ran. So that'll be something to pay attention to for sure.
My last X's and O's question for you, Dre, is I asked Jrue how you're going to slow the Warriors down. How do you think the Warriors are going to plan on slowing the Kings down, their dribble handoffs, with DeMontis Sabonis and Fox? And do you think that with Wiggins just coming back from this long hiatus, it's going to be tough for him to just get back right into the fold and play at the level we saw at the playoffs last year? And do you think that Keegan Murray's ability to stretch the floor is going to hurt Draymond's, kind of free safety help stuff? Because the guy can get hot, man. And when those threes start falling, that place is going to start bouncing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question to answer. How would I stop the best offense by at least rating ever? I mean, the motion stuff, a lot of those principles are comparable to what the Warriors run.
Facts.
So that's at least a good thing. At least you can, familiarize and understand, how to get over the, fight over certain screens, force them into certain shot diets and shot concentrations on the floor, distribute it so as to funnel certain shot selection. But at the end of the day, like, you're giving something up. Any great offensive team, you're giving something up. So you just got to do your best to have them kind of eat at the shot clock, rotate on point and on target. I mean, I would probably I would switch a lot because, we got a lot.
Would you switch 2 through 5? Like, would you switch Clay on a Sabonis?
I would. And then, what you would probably do there is, because I remember even watching the matchup last night, in my live watch, like, you got, Clay on Sabonis, and then you got guys kind of shadowing or digging, and then you got to rotate, and you got to force them to make a play, and then, Harrison Barnes had an open 3 on that particular possession. Draymond closed out and he missed it. Sometimes he'll hit that shot, but again, you got to give him different looks. There is no one scheme that you run the entire series or the entire game. You got to give them a mixed coverages, and you got to give them different shot selections, shot diets, because if you try to, if you funnel the ball to one spot on the court the whole time, like, Sabonis is good enough to pick you apart. If you, go under the screen, Fox is too quick. Like, you're going to have to blitz a little bit. You're going to have to, ice, run some ice coverage where you're kind of stunt recovering. The cat and mouse game. Force, skip passes and closeouts. Like, force guys to attack closeouts. There's so many things that you're going to see throughout the series, but I think the I guess the most sustainable defensive scheme that they could run would probably be switching and then just rotating, because you're gonna, if you switch more times than not, if Sabonis has like Clay on him, or Sabonis has even Wiggins on him, you're gonna want to throw help every now and then, and then at that point you're in rotation. So as long as
Right.
our rotations are on point, which, see, that's the thing, is earlier in the season where guys were switching, or Peel switching, or helping the helper, complete chaos, like no communication, no chemistry, just nobody would. I honestly, nobody was playing for each other. It just felt like they were dead out there. But now, as of the last month or so, 2 months, it feels way more harmonic. It feels way more seamless, and like they're on a string defensively, and they're helping the helper, and they're rotating on time, and they're switching. It's almost like, like I said, harmonic. It's beautiful. It's almost as beautiful as the offense. So I think defensively, as long as there's communication, and as long as that they're on the same page in terms of sticking to the scheme, I think we can we can at least get away with certain things. But again, the Kings are going to get certain looks. You're just going to have to hope that they miss shots. And that's kind of the game plan against the Warriors too. The Warriors, you're going to pick your poison. You're going to give them certain looks, and you're going to have to hope that they just turn the ball over or miss open shots at some point. With the Wiggins question, coming off the bench, I mean, I'm not too worried about him offensively necessarily. I think we have enough firepower, given in a playoff setting. I just think, like you said, defensively, it's more so just being, aware, attentive, focused, sharp, switchable, point of attack, that kind of thing. Um, and then rebounding wise, right, is, can you just get 8 rebounds, 7, 8 rebounds, and if he can just give us, good defensive possessions and a handful of rebounds, I don't care if he gives us 11 points, like, or even 8 points. Like, the scoring is not going to be necessarily how I measure him. It's going to be, how connected is he on defense? Is he getting beat by his man? Is he not rotating on time? Does he look a step slow out there? Is he not boxing out? Like, last playoffs, he didn't really have crazy scoring outputs. Like, he was up and down, right? There were times in the finals where he was great. There were times, earlier on against Denver and Memphis, he was up and down. But 12 points, 13 points, 15 points. But ultimately, if he can just be a plus defensively and rebounding wise, he'll always be a plus. He's a walking positive. And then in terms of the Draymond Keegan Murray question, I think, Al Horford last year in the finals, you kind of saw a snapshot of that, where you see, like, when you have multiple spacers on the floor, especially at that 4 spot, and you got 4 dudes who are just spacing the floor, then you got the vertical threat of a Robert Williams. It just poses some issues. But I think Draymond, around game two-ish, two to middle of the series, but depends. But sometimes it takes him a couple games to figure out how, habits, tendencies, kind of these, what players like to go to, what they're, if they like to go left, if they like to, dribble with their offhand and, step back on the wing. Do they like to go downhill, go middle, baseline cuts, the 45 cuts? Like, what are the patterns of their offense? What are the patterns of these players? And Keegan is very good off of curls. He's very good in the spot up situations. He can move off the ball. He's shifty. And he's a spacer, and he's like 6'8", 6'9". Like, he's not like 6'5", right? He's a 4. He's a 3-4. So at that spot, like, you got to respect that. He's going to be a spacer out there who's like 38-40% from 3. That's a guy you got to keep your eyes on, and you can't necessarily help off of him every possession. Draymond likes to cheat a bit. He likes to cheat and help off of guys, leave that corner spot open. But you got to, again, and that's going to be a challenge maybe for a game or two. But by game, 4, 3, whatever it is, in the middle of the series, he'll kind of get a feel for, like, what kind of, maybe he kind of cheats off, baits a pass, and then attacks, and forces Keegan to attack the closeout. And Keegan has that, 2-dribble pull-up in his bag. He can do things, but is that better than him taking a spot up open 3 in the corner? For sure. I mean, so it's kind of like Clay, right? You want to run Clay off the line and make Clay create off the bounce. Can he hit that shot? Of course. But you'd prefer that outcome. So, yeah, I mean, as far as Keegan goes, like, Draymond's going to figure something out. And it's just a matter of if Keegan can make him pay or not, whatever that looks like. But like, everybody talks about in the playoffs, your primary attack is just cut off. Like, you're not going to go, the Warriors aren't necessarily going to always get to their spots in their normal actions. Neither are the Kings, neither are the Suns, neither are the Clippers. The question is, are your secondary attacks, when you're provided certain looks? You look at the Suns series last year against the Mavs, you're trapping, Book. They're forcing Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson to beat them. Bismack Biyombo, top of the key, making decisions. There's a reason why the Suns look the way they did. They look like deer in headlights because they weren't put in that position all year, and their primary attack was cut off. So there's very few teams I can say confidently that are as good in their secondary attack as the Warriors. So we'll see what happens, but I'm sure Mike Brown is very well aware of having counters for certain defensive schemes and whatnot, and how to play out of that.
Real quick, you said Wiggins is going to start off the bench. So who's starting? Jordan Poole or GP2?
Yeah, so I would expect, it's not official yet, so I don't want to necessarily report that, but I will say Wiggins I would expect him to come off the bench because he's going to be on a minutes restriction, 20 to 25 minutes. He was asked the other day, how would you feel about coming off the bench? And he's like, yeah, you got to do what's best for the team. If Steph came off the bench, why can't I? And
Right.
He's referring to Steph coming off the bench last year against Denver, coming off the injury in the same similar kind of pattern in terms of recovery and rehab. Although Wiggins isn't injured, but from a ramp up standpoint. So yeah, I mean, if Wiggins isn't starting, like I'm gonna expect Dante to start. Usually, Steve is kind of from what I've heard and the whispers and the suggestive remarks in the pressers and all that stuff. Steve is going to lean Dante starting lineup, just kind of a stabilizing force, a guy who can dribble, pass, shoot, a guy who can, be okay defensively. He's a good defender. I don't think he's going to stop anyone. But if he can give us, a solid 6 minutes to start off the game, that's all we need. And then you got GP2, you got Wiggins, you got Kuminga coming in, and you can trust that rotation of POA guys. But yeah, I would fully expect Dante to start if Wiggins isn't, and I don't expect Wiggins to start because of what I've heard throughout, different like podcasts and different suggestive things that, in the press conference.
Yeah, I think, well, it sounds like the point of attack defense is going to get much better coming off the bench if Wiggins comes off the bench along with GP2. My last basketball related question on court for you, Jrue, is I think honestly this series is going to have a lot of close games. I think this is going to be close given that De'Aaron Fox has been so good in the clutch this year. What's your confidence level in him to close out games, maybe outperform Curry at the end of games, given though that this is the playoffs, this is foreign territory for him? But I will say, Domantas Sabonis, Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes, these guys have tasted playoffs before. And, in Kevin Huerter's case, he just went to the conference finals 2 years ago. But as far as Fox, he is a rookie to this. Do you have the confidence that he can perform on the big stage and win some close games and outperform Curry in that last 2-3 minutes, 4 minutes?
Yeah, now I feel bad because I said earlier it was just Delly and HB that had playoff experience. Kevin Huerter had one of the most legendary moments in playoffs history. I think the entire city of Philadelphia hates that man.
Yeah, Game 7, he was big time.
Yeah, man, he was crazy. Look, I will always have confidence in De'Aaron Fox to be the clutch player that he has been this season when it counts the most. In the final 5 minutes of a game that's within 5 points, I expect De'Aaron Fox to hunt his shot, to get to his spots. He'll do what needs to be done in order to at least keep his team hanging around or will his team to a victory like he's done so many times this season. But like you said, this is going to be in the playoffs, and it is going to be against Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Steve Kerr on the other side, right? Looking down at him from the other bench. So look, I can't say with full confidence that, oh yeah, he's going to outperform these guys who have been there and done that many, many times before. I can't sit here and boldly proclaim that De'Aaron Fox is going to go out there and he's going to make those guys look like they've never even played in a clutch situation before, because he's been so clutch this season and that's been his whole signature thing this year.
Right.
But I fully expect him to do what he has been doing all season. I do think that there were a few moments this year where the Kings, they really did. they had a chance to clinch against the Minnesota Timberwolves. They had a chance to clinch a playoff spot for the first time in 17 years against the Minnesota Timberwolves on, I believe it was March 27th. And it was at home. It was at Golden One Center. I was in the building. That place was ready. That place was ready to just absolutely lose it and just blow the roof off of Golden One Center. The energy in that place pregame, because I got there real early because I knew it was going to be a mess. Like you didn't want to be late. You don't want to miss player intros or anything like that because the energy was it was palpable from even outside the building as you're walking up to it. The Kings laid an egg. They didn't play well. The Timberwolves had just played the night before against the Warriors, and they were resting Karl-Anthony Towns. And you can make the debate about whether or not that makes the Timberwolves better or not, missing one of Rudy or missing one of Karl-Anthony Towns. But bottom line is they were shorthanded, and the Kings did not play well that night. And then the following Sunday, they had a chance to clinch the division at home against the San Antonio Spurs. The environment wasn't quite as popping as it was the previous Monday, but you take care of business that Sunday against a team that's missing their three best players and is one of the worst teams in the league. Then you clinch your division in front of your home fans. And those are two moments that stick out to me because there were things at stake, if you will, right? There were things that mattered. Like implications were very clear. Like if you win this game, this happens. And quite frankly, the team didn't play very well as a whole. But looking at specifically Fox and Sabonis, they just didn't really have it those nights, at least not as much as you hoped they would. And in a way, I'm glad that those things happened, even though it's disappointing for us fans. I'm glad that those things happened because come playoff time, that's every game. Like you better just get used to it, and you better get over the lights being a little bit brighter quick because you got a minimum of 4 games to play in that environment. You need to get over it. So I think that worries me a little bit, especially for the first couple of games. But I would imagine by the middle of the second game, I can't imagine Fox really having deer in the headlights syndrome for that long, or past that point, because he might need a game to feel it out. But at the end of the day, it's just basketball, and I think De'Aaron knows that. And so I do think that his clutch ability will come to the forefront at some point during this series. I think it will help the Kings win a game or two. I just wonder how long it'll take for him to really acclimate himself to the environment.
Yeah, and you mentioned those big games. Another one that was big, what you could find the vlog on the channel, was against us, the second highest scoring game ever. I feel like when you won that game, you solidified a top 3 seed. It was I knew that moment we weren't going to be able to reach you guys, and De'Aaron totally made big shots at the end of that game. I think what's going to be cool about this series is Sabonis for the first time. Like, I think he really has some pressure. Like, there's going to be a real highlight on him because even though you guys aren't picked to win the series, with Indiana, no one really cared. Like, what I mean? Whereas this is a big deal. Dre, my final question for you. All season long, whether it's Draymond, Steve Kerr, this Warriors team has kind of given off this regular season does not matter attitude. And if there's any team that can have that attitude, it is you guys. But you've only won championships as a top 3 seed. I've always mentioned that when in regards to the Clippers and stuff. Do you think that this team this season has the ability to just flip that switch? You get Wiggins back, Curry plays at that level again, best player in the world kind of level, and you can still win the championship, potentially having to play 4 series on the road.
Yeah, I think we could absolutely win the championship, and we could also get caught. Like, I think this year, though, I will say, so we can go back in time and we can look at the 95 Rockets, right? And they're the exception to the rule, right? They're not the rule, they're the exception. But they were the previous season, I think they were like a top 3 or 4 seed. And so they win the title that year. Then that second season back to back, led by Hakeem, they kind of let their foot off the gas. They ended up being the 6th seed. It's funny. I was looking at some numbers the other day. So the Rockets that season were the 6th seed and they were 11th in net rating. The Warriors this year are the 6th seed and 11th in net rating. But again, they're the Rockets that season. They won the title. They went back to back. But I think one of their series against Phoenix, I think, went to 7 games.
They came back 3-1 down.
Yeah, they were 3-1 down. Yeah. So yeah, like it's not necessarily like people like to bring that up and back to back, but it's not like they just coasted through the playoffs. They're the exception to the rule, but it can be done. History's not on our side. Like history, that's just the facts. When you look at the numbers, the history is just not on our side, right? 6 seeds don't usually win titles. the defensive rating, the net rating, that kind of thing. Usually teams within top 3 to top 7-ish net rating, those teams usually win. Teams within top 5 or 6 defensive rating usually win, historically. So yeah, I mean, they're not taking the regular season seriously, but part of it was also not, there was a point in the season where we were just resting guys on back-to-backs. This was like in November, December, January. We were just not playing those games. We're like, look, you guys, we were just giving games away on the road. Clay recently got cleared to play back-to-backs as of like a month or two ago. We started to, ramp it up and play certain lineups and play a more condensed rotation. And I think we took when I saw the team take it seriously, right? And you can tell based on how they come out, not necessarily makes or misses, but the process, how they, are they moving well? Are they turning the ball over? Are their rotations crisp? Are they, locked in defensively? Are they rebounding? Are they, engaged? Body language, like that kind of thing. And the games that I could say, yes, they were. Like, there was a game against Boston, obviously on the road. We lost that game, but I felt for 3.9 quarters, we played well. And then at the end there, you close with Jordan Poole, things happen. Different rebounds happen. But I was encouraged coming out of that game because Boston was playing some of the best basketball of any team at that point the entire season. And to go on the road for a team that, again, the Warriors were just an awful road team all year. And that was, I think, in, what do I want to say, like December, I think that game was. Could have been January. But that game was a big game, and I think we came out really well, and that gave me encouragement. There were pockets, there's games throughout the season where I can point to and be like, this team still has it. It's just a matter of building those habits and putting it together. The question is, have they had enough time to establish those habits, and will they be able to put it together in the playoffs? I think the answer is yes. I'll lean more towards yes from a historical standpoint, but also from this season. I can point to different games and different stretches at home and on the road where I'm like, okay, this is an encouraging stretch of, minutes, an encouraging game overall, an encouraging stretch of games that I can say, yeah, I'm confident that this can translate in the playoffs. But also, this team has beaten themselves. So if they, this team could very easily have a 20-point lead and blow it because they get too comfortable, they get complacent, they turn the ball over, they take some questionable shots, they give up a layup here, an open three there. Next thing you know, 12-point game. They get a bit tight, miss a couple shots. Now you blow the lead, right? And we've seen this throughout the entire NBA season from all teams. Every team's blown leads because of variance, because teams they're as skilled and the shooting is as good as ever. But I've also seen some self-inflicted wounds from the Warriors this season. Not some, a ton. I mean, someone did the math like a couple weeks ago, and they're like, yeah, 18 games we were leading into the fourth quarter, and we just blew the game. Just took our foot off the gas. And a lot of those games were on the road, actually, like against Charlotte, against Miami, against Orlando.
I watched all those.
All those games, man, and against Detroit, like, again, it's not just like what the dudes we have now are not the dudes we had early on. Wiseman was just a major negative. And that wasn't to any fault of his own. He was just put in a bad, compromising spot he wasn't ready for. Kuminga wasn't necessarily as polished or as, his intuition in terms of the system and the defensive schemes weren't as sharp as they are now. Right. Jordan Poole's gained some rhythm. Like earlier on in the season, he was just not great. I mean, he was missing shots. His shot selection was poor. His defense was very, very bad. But now he's locked in on both ends. And that doesn't mean he's a great defender, but he can at least hold his own for stretches, and that's all we ask. So I just think the numbers are, and I was thinking this throughout the season, like just based on variance and how I saw things shift. Because I'm a numbers guy, but I'm also an eye test guy. You got to do both, and you got to find a way to balance both and see which to throw out, which to balance, which you can take, which you can, dismiss. And I think this season, based on kind of what I've seen across the board, I think this is a year where you can kind of take the numbers at surface level and kind of dismiss them in some ways. If you watch a team close enough, you kind of have an idea of what they truly are. And I think the numbers this season, in terms of where a team ranks in terms of defensive rating, because of the parity this year, you can't truly tell because you can't adjust for injuries. You can't adjust for acclimation, chemistry, rotations, lineups, all these things that go into it. Go into an output statistically. You can't adjust for those factors, and that's reflected in the Clippers net rating, the Warriors net rating, the Kings net rating. Like you can't adjust for those things, especially in the playoffs. The purest form of basketball is going to be shown. Like when you're in the mud and you have to get a bucket, like are you able to produce? If you have to get a stop, two stops in the row because you're down by 4, can you do that? Like those type of questions aren't necessarily quantifiable in the regular season. So yeah, I'm going to be cautious, and I hate this phrase. Like I hate it because it's a cop out, but I'll be cautiously optimistic, but I'm leaning towards optimistic regardless, because I do feel like there hasn't been anything that suggests this season that this team can't win a championship. And so if you tell me you want to give this core a chance to win the title and they're healthy, I'm taking that chance until the wheels fall off. And that's kind of just my standpoint on that.
So your answer is yes. This is definitely going to be a flip the switch kind of job for the Warriors this season. We saw them catch their stride last year in the playoffs when they didn't end the season perfectly. You had injuries, you had Steph coming back, but they found their stride in the playoffs, kind of used that first round series against the Nuggets as kind of like a warm up. This is not going to be the case. I think this Kings team is going to be much more dangerous than that Nuggets team. But yeah, as long as you have Stephen Curry, you have a chance. And especially Steph Curry, Draymond, and Clay, who have still not lost a Western Conference series since Game 7 that I attended 9 years ago. To end it out, Jrue, you mentioned it, 17 years, man. I mean, those first 2 games, given the Warriors' road record, all you got to do is just not lose a home game. If you don't lose a home game, you got this series. I think that, talking to Warriors fans, those first 2 games are going to be massive. If the Warriors get a split, because the Warriors are a great home team too, I think the Warriors – actually, no, isn't it the Kings that aren't like as good of a home team as you'd expect?
That's what I was about to say is I've made the joke plenty of times this week. The Kings are going to have to steal a couple of home games in order to win this series. Yeah, they're not as good as you would expect. They're not bad though, so that's the thing. I think it's the most confounding thing, the fact that they are the second worst team by defensive rating at home, and we have tried around here. We have tried so many different theories and have proposed so many reasons as to why that's the case. Nobody knows why. Everybody just plays well when they come to Sacramento. I have no idea why. And then conversely, the Kings, they have a better road record than home record.
Wow.
And they are, I think, 3rd in offensive rating on the road and 9th in defensive rating on the road.
Wow.
So the joke has been, both teams are just going to play horribly at Golden One Center, but when they get to Chase Center, they're both going to play at the 2 best teams of all time. So, with the Warriors being 33-8 at home, and that's the other thing that's just been so jarring looking at records, Andre, is the fact that like it really is the complete reverse. 33-8 at home and 11-30 on the road. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it. So that'll be an interesting thing to pay attention to for sure. But I'm with you. Look, they have to take advantage of the fact that they have home court advantage. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I do agree. If the Kings split the first 2 games with the Warriors at Golden One Center, they'll be in a little bit of trouble. I think going back to Chase Center, doesn't matter how well the Kings play on the road. That's an
uphill battle.
Oh yeah, big time. And Chase Center gets rocking too. So I would really, really like to see the Kings take care of business and take advantage of the fact that they do have home court advantage and take those first 2 games. But obviously, that's a lot easier said than done. So
Inversely, though, the way you say if we split, you're going to be nervous. I think if you guys go up 2-0, though, then the Warriors fans will start to get nervous and think, oh, my God, like, we're going to have to really win a road game to win this series. And it's not going to be that easy. To finish off, man, you told me you were going to be attending some of these games. I mean, let me know the excitement level, what you expect from the fans. I cannot wait. I've been waiting for months for you guys to host a playoff game again. Yeah. I still remember 2006 because that was my first year getting into basketball. Like you said, 99. I still remember being at my grandma's house when Kevin Martin hit that buzzer beater, not the bounce against the Spurs. So this is going to be insane. So many people haven't even seen, like my age or younger, haven't seen the Kings in the playoffs. They don't know what it's like. This is going to be insane. You know, I've been at some playoff games that will not be nearly the sound of this, but I can feel when I've been a part of crowds that it feels like you're literally affecting the outcome of the game.
Yeah.
I mean, how big is this going to be for the city, man? The Kings fans to really make this place like an earthquake.
Yeah, the city's already, I mean, decked out in purple. Murals have gone up, a whole bunch of promotional posters, billboards, all that stuff all around downtown. They're opening up like a playground event type of thing. I think right across the street from the arena, basically. They've already got that up and it's open and people are already there checking it out. They're going to have a rally here in about 3 minutes, starting in the downtown commons area right in front of the arena. Yeah, the city's, just in case you didn't know, the city's a little bit excited about this. And yeah, my only fear is that since the tickets have been so expensive, and I don't know if you've been looking, Andre, but it's more expensive to go to a game at Golden One Center than it is at Chase Center. And we're talking about and these are the defending champions we're talking about. It's cheaper for a Kings fan to drive to the Bay Area and go to a game there. Like, people want to be in the building. I'm afraid that a lot of the diehards got priced out. Yeah. I hope that's not the case. I hope the building's still jumping, but I do think that when Kevin Huerter hit that eventual game winner against the Utah Jazz back in December, and anybody who was watching that game on their TV, like their speakers just like clipped and like may have blown out. I think ever since that moment, because that clip went viral, like there were so many huge NBA media personalities just tweeting that video out over and over again, and they were just like, don't say anything, just listen. And if you're wearing headphones, RIP. That place went nuts. It went like the roof legitimately did blow off that place. I have never seen a place get that loud. And this is, I've been to hundreds of games at Arco Arena where it was the loudest arena in the league for a long, long time. Golden One Center has Arco Arena potential. They showed it in that one moment. I hope that sticks around, and I hope that remains the same for this series because they're going to need it. And the other thing that's tricky about playing the Warriors is since these two teams are so close in proximity, I expect a lot of Warriors fans to be at Golden One Center, but I also expect the reverse as well, to see a lot of Kings fans down in San Francisco for games down there. So yeah, I can't wait. And I will 100% tell you, I will report back to you with how the environment is as soon as I step in the building tomorrow at 5:30.
So you got tickets for every game or just game one?
Games 1 and 2. Okay,
cool.
Not cheap, but
not cheap at all.
But I had to be there. I think any diehard Kings fan was like, I'll pay whatever it takes. I just want to be in the building. So yeah.
Yep. So, gentlemen, this was amazing. Definitely the most X's and No savvy duo I've had so far. Let the great people know where they can find you, man. Starting with you, Dre.
Oh yeah, man. You could just follow me at OnBallSteph on Twitter, OnBallSteph at OnBallSteph. Yeah, I mean, I have a live watch. I know Drew's gonna go to the game, so I'll be at home on the other side of the country watching the games on playback.tv/chasingwins. And yeah, man, I just appreciate you both having me and having this conversation. And Drew, right? That's your name, right?
Yep.
I'd love to have you on you're on Twitter Spaces at all or not?
Yeah, I used to be on them a lot more, but you know, I mean, if you're doing one and you'd love to have me on, hey, pleasure be all mine.
No, yeah, for sure. We do a Spaces before and after every game. So anytime like you're free, I'll follow you. And
Sure.
Anytime you're free after the game, or whether it be game 1 or game 4, game 6, whatever it is, pop in whenever you're free, whenever you're available. And we'd love to have your perspective on just the game after the game, whenever you want to come in, and you're more than welcome to come in, and we'd love to have you share your thoughts.
For sure, man. I appreciate that.
All you.
Oh, hey, that local guy on Twitter, THATL0, the 0 for the O, CALGUY on Twitter. And then on Instagram, I don't really post like super basketball X's and O stuff on there, anything like that. But if you want to, I'm at JRU.E on Twitter. Yeah. Hey, thank you so much for having me on, man. This was awesome. This was fantastic. You
don't have a podcast either? Because I saw you have something in your
bio.
bio.
Yeah. Oh, of course, man. King's Film Room's in here. I'm like, yeah, man. Darren, you're the man. In the Film Room, a Sacramento Kings podcast I do with my buddy King's Film Room, who's in the chat, and my other buddy Abe. Go ahead and give us a look. We're on all streaming platforms. And then I got to shout out Meg, who's been in the chat this entire time. She just dropped the classic Mark Jones Golden One. The microphone is yours. And Mark Jones is calling game 1 tomorrow. So along with Doris Burke. So it's gonna be awesome, man. This is something that Kings fans have been waiting for. We're like, oh, we got Mark Jones as the play-by-play guy. I wonder when he's gonna call an ESPN game. And it might have had a chance of happening this past season a couple times, and then ESPN flexed us out. So now we have finally reached the point where they had no choice. They had to put Mark Jones and DB on the call, and it's going to be game 1 of the first playoff series in 17 years. So can't wait for those. Really happy for those listening at home. It's going to be fun.
Predictions, fellas. I got the Warriors in 6 probably, but I could see it going 7 and the Warriors winning, but that would be hard to win a game 7 in Sacramento. I'm going to go 6, safer pick. You guys?
I'm going Kings in 6. I'm not even being a homer there. I do think that they can, like I said, steal a couple of big wins at home. And then I do think that for whatever reason, they lock in a little bit better on the road. And I do think that the lack of travel between both cities is huge for both teams. I think more the Warriors and the Kings since they're a veteran group.
Right.
But I also think that not having that much travel, I mean, I think the level of play in this series is going to be very, very high. It's going to be exceptional. And I think that as long as the Kings just go out there and run their stuff and do what they do, I think that they can walk out in 6 games.
Andre, I'm guessing you're going Warriors in 6?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's a cop-out, but, I mean, Warriors in 6. I mean, I think close it out at Chase. Hopefully split the first 2, win the next 2, lose the next one, and then win at Chase. I mean, that's
the classic.
That's probably like the cliche template of how the series would go. But, I mean, who knows, man? This shit, I mean, if the Kings go up 2-0, we're looking at a 7-game series, I think. So
it's going to be amazing. I can't wait for game 1. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Please give these guys a follow and check out their own stuff. Great stuff. And you let me know in the pinned comment what your prediction for the series is. Let's see it.